Hi, welcome. Is everybody sure? Are we ready to go?
Ready.
All right. Okay, well, welcome everyone. So glad you can join us today for our monthly Lunch and Learn. We're really excited about this month's session with art therapy and therapeutic music. And so glad you could join us. This event is brought to you by Age Friendly Edmonton and is an initiative of Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council supported by the City of Edmonton. Age Friendly Edmonton is part of a global movement to build age-friendly cities and their communities, and it is a city that recognizes the diverse populations and needs of seniors and actively supports their inclusion, engagement, and well-being. My name is Kathy Harvey, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Ageism Hub and am part of the planning committee for our Lunch and Learns. We respectfully acknowledge that Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council is in Treaty 6 and on the traditional lands of the Cree, Blackfoot, Iroquois, Dene, Nakota Sioux, the Saulteaux, the Anish and Abwe, and Ojibwe nations. We acknowledge and respect the past, present, and future generations of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who continue to strengthen Edmonton and Canada. So just a little housekeeping. If you have any comments or questions that come to mind during either of our presentations today, just put them on the chat and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation as time allows. We'd like you to keep yourself muted during the presentation. And you can review this presentation or let other people know about it later on Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council YouTube channel. So please see the link in the chat, and or you can visit Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council website to find out more about that. So our presenters for today are Cheryl Horn and Tammy Halun, and we're really excited about having both of these women with us today. So just a little bit about each of them. So Tammy, let's see what I got here. So Cheryl is going to start off today, and she is a registered Canadian art therapist, and about how art therapy can help with improving your mental health and overall well-being. Cheryl's training and life experiences enable her to work in a way that draws on psychological theories combined with creativity and simple art making. This creative process and exploration often leads to new ideas emerging. These ideas are used by those she works with to gain insight and make decisions for themselves in order to move towards living with more vitality, joy, and hope. That sounds really exciting. And Tammy is a certified healthcare musician. And the purpose of therapeutic music is to provide a healing environment to promote physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Tammy will share the benefits of therapeutic music and will talk about some of her personal experiences through her work in this area. So welcome both Cheryl and Tammy, and Cheryl's going to start us off.
Hello, everybody. My name, as you've heard, is Cheryl Horn, and I'm a registered Canadian art therapist. And I'm here today to give some information about art therapy. And I do have a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm just going to share my screen and get that going for you guys. Okay, so here we go. So art therapy. A lot of people, when they hear the term art therapy, they think it's therapy just for kids or people who are artists. And while it is true that kids and people who are artists might use art therapy, it is really for anyone. Everyone and anyone can benefit from art therapy. In our culture, we tend to believe that unless we have talent, we should stop singing or dancing, drawing, or doing any other creative thing that we don't think we have a skill in. And we start to think of ourselves as not creative and focus more on words and logic. part of my mission as an art therapist is to help people discover that they don't need special skills or talent in order to enjoy and benefit from the arts. And one of the best moments in my job is when I have a client who comes in saying something like, I'm not an artist, or I'm not creative, Cheryl. And later on, they discover that they've been able to create something very meaningful and that their creative side is functioning just fine. Adults can use art therapy to meet any treatment goal, expressing and dealing with difficult emotions, processing trauma, managing mental health issues, and so much more. So you don't have to be a skilled artist at all to benefit from art therapy. In art therapy sessions, the main goal is to just gain new awareness by experiencing the process of the art making. And there's no right or wrong way to make art in art therapy. You don't need to make your art pretty. And that's what this picture that I have up is for. So it doesn't have to be pretty, precise. You don't even have to understand what it is that you've created. And in fact, sometimes more interesting and useful things arise in you from what you might consider like ugly or messy art, as in this case. So this is something that I created. I have all of the pictures that I'm going to show you. I have a couple of pictures of artwork, are all creations that I have personally made, either in art therapy sessions or while I was in art therapy school, or even just for my own processing of my emotions. And this first one shows an example of something that you might think is pretty messy. It's probably something I wouldn't hang on my wall, but making it was very, very helpful for me. And so you can see, like, you don't have to be able to come in and do a beautiful, fantastic, photorealistic representation. You just come in and you use art materials. And the goal of using the arts and visual materials in therapy is just to tap into different parts of your brain and start using your imagination, metaphors, and images to gain a new perspective and solve problems in new ways. The art that's created in the sessions is usually quick and relatively simple, and yet it has the power to really open up new and profound insights that can show the way forward in different challenges that we face. So the art making is often really simple because we don't have a long period of time to actually create the art usually, so it's pretty simple. And the next thing I'm going to show you is something that only took 5 minutes for me to create. This is something I made while I was in art therapy school in a class that was focusing on grief and bereavement. And everybody in the class was invited to have in mind somebody in their own life who had passed away. And it couldn't help but bring up to mind, I have an older brother who passed away about 14 years before I was in this class. And I had actually done a lot of work. I had done, my family had gone to some counseling together and we'd done some work, but it wasn't until I started getting into it with art materials that I really felt a shift. And making this piece, even though it only took 5 minutes, it really, really impacted me and connected me to my sadness and allowed me to really feel that in a deeper way that was really helpful for me. Taking part in art therapy, and one of the things I love about it is that you really use your whole body to create things, and it can be a very embodied experience. Sometimes my own experience, I can only speak for myself, but in art therapy, sitting in a chair, it could remain very logic oriented and be kind of all in your head. And so doing art and getting into it, and some of the things that you make can be very embodied, like working with clay and things like that. It really gets into some different spaces in you and releases some emotion that is kind of stored in your body. Another thing I love about art therapy is this makes it different from just straight talk therapy, is that you leave with a concrete physical item, like this little sculpture that I made. And that item can serve as a reminder of what was done during your session. I have had moments in talk therapy and I felt like I was having like the biggest aha moments, only to be getting ready for the next week's appointment and scratching my head and being like, what did we talk about again? Could not remember. So having an artistic item that you bring home with you can help keep these things on the top of the mind. And not only that, when you are in art therapy and you have several sessions and you've got a whole collection of work, laying out the whole collection of things that you've created can really help you start seeing the themes and the storylines emerging. And then you can critically examine those storylines and you can begin to ask how you can change them. Literally, you can add onto and change the art that you've made and transform it into a new creation. And this can lead to discovering ways that you can move forward that will make the next chapters of your life more joyful and fulfilling. This little sculpture is something that I made that I have out, and it actually helps me remember that I don't always have to work so hard, and it's okay to take some days off and just stop and smell the roses. And you might be able to see it very faint going across the arms. It says, stop and smell the roses. So that's my little item that helps me remember that. So what is an art therapy session like? One of the very important elements of art therapy, and what actually makes it therapy instead of an art class, is what you would be doing is making goals for yourself and something that you're actually working forward towards. So we'd have some therapeutic goals to focus on, and some examples of goals that you might pick to focus on in the therapy sessions could be things like alleviating clinical depression or anxiety symptoms, working through some traumatic experiences and lessening PTSD symptoms, or improving quality of your relationships. But really the possible goals are as varied as the clients who come in. In addition to the goals you want to work on, the art therapist will draw upon psychotherapy theories. And these theories will be woven into the art prompts that are given to you, and will also, shape the questions and the interaction that we have for you based on the art that you've been making. But all of this is always done with the aim of working towards a goal that you have identified. And then, of course, you create some art. So your goals and the comfort level that you have with art would influence what is done and how we get started. For some people who are open to the idea of trying art therapy but aren't yet really comfortable with art making, you might start with simple, like magazine photo collages, something like that. Choosing pre-cut images and words feels less threatening to a lot of people than being asked to draw something. And the images are already there. All you need to do is pick up the ones that help you describe your situation. So if, for example, your goals include learning to set better boundaries in relationships, you might be asked to take a few minutes to choose images that remind you of your current relationships and just kind of play around with placing them on a page that also has an image that represents yourself on it, and just seeing what comes up. And while you're doing that, another really important part of an art therapy session is that you're being witnessed. So art therapists and creative therapists a lot of times talk about being witnessed. And that's a very important part of the process. It has a few purposes. So for the therapist, we would be noting the process of your art making and assisting you if you need some assistance, and just giving you the gift of our full attention and observation. I'd notice if it takes a long time to get started, or if you quickly dive in, or how you sit back and contemplate a particular image, or maybe when you exhale and smile after adding something onto your art. There are very few moments in life where someone offers you their complete presence and powers of observation and attention. So while I'm witnessing, the art therapist's job is not to act or think of what to say or judge, but just to be present and attuned to you and your process and your art product. And when everyone's at their best, this witnessing creates a sacred space where you're empowered to be courageous in your art and your exploration. And then when we afterwards discuss the image, I note my observations and help you ponder whether they have any bearing on the issues that you're bringing with you into therapy. And then another thing with art therapy that's really great is it can help you gain distance and perspective on the issues that you're bringing in. So when you feel like your image is complete, you would normally sit together and put it at a little distance from yourself and just observe it, witness the art. So the art brings a whole third presence into the mix, where you can relate to the art, not just to each other. So that's just another way that art therapy offers you a chance to look at your issues from a new perspective. And then your art therapist would probably ask you what the process of the art making was like, what stood out to you, or if there was anything that was surprising or pleasant or difficult about making it. Maybe you might be asked to explain what the image means to you and the feelings that you have when you are viewing it. And we might discuss any observations on the process of making it as well. And then finally, one of the great things, another great thing, is that you can then alter it. So after talking it through and what the experience was like and kind of processing that together, you could get a chance to change something about it. After processing it together, there might be something about it that you're like, no, that's not quite right. I want to change this. And you can actually go and change it. And so by changing that visual representation of your reality, you can sometimes map out a path to change and growth. So in order to facilitate this kind of work, an art therapist must have some specialized training in counseling, psychology, and in fine art. In Canada and the United States, art therapists must have a minimum of a master's degree or a master's level diploma in counseling and art therapy before identifying themselves as an art therapist. This graduate level education includes supervised clinical practicum, and in Canada, you need to have at least 700 hours of practicum that's supervised before you graduate from your program. And then you can be called a professional art therapist. And then again, in Canada, you can apply after you've had an extra 1,000 hours of working with clients face-to-face, being supervised. You can then apply for the designation of registered Canadian art therapist. So when you meet with an art therapist, you can be sure you are receiving services from a very qualified professional. And we are bound by ethical codes of conduct, and safety and confidentiality are always emphasized in art therapy sessions. So then, if that sounds like something that might be interesting, how might you select an art therapist? Well, if this sounds like something that might be beneficial for you or for somebody that you love and care for, you have a right to ask about some of their qualifications. And you should feel free to ask them a bit about how they work and what psychology theories they draw upon. And you can start to get a feeling if that's somebody that you'd feel comfortable meeting with. And you can also ask them what kind of experience or knowledge they have about working with older adults, or any particular identifying thing that you feel applies to yourself. So particularly working with older adults, when I was taking my master's degree, which I graduated from in 2020, right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I was finishing up my last capstone project, which was a lot of fun. But anyways, not that long ago, and that I was in my master's degree. And even still, there was only one class that was required on developmental psychology. So that's the study of life stages and what can broadly be expected in each stage. And many of the life stage theories that were studied were really sparse when it came to older adulthood. So one of the most widely cited theories of like psychosocial development is this stage-based theory. This is a depiction of the stage-based theory that was put forth by Erik Erikson. And he proposed 8 developmental stages, beginning with infancy and then ending with old age. And each of the 8 stages presents a crisis, and how well one copes with this crisis determines whether they move towards positive development or more negative development. But this theory has very significant limitations when working with older adults because of the very broad age range for the developmental stages, anybody 65 and over. So over the last couple of decades, there's been a big shift in thinking and study about what can be expected in the later adult years. And many, many new books have been written on successful aging, and new theories have been put forth and expanded on the developmental stages of the later years of life. And one person who studied and wrote on this subject is a man named Gene Cohen, who was a student of Erik Erikson's. And Cohen shared that this was an area that Erikson actually acknowledged that his life stages were lacking in. And he says that Erikson challenged his students to continue the work by developing the domain of older adulthood. And so that's just what Gene Cohen did. He took that seriously and he studied that, and he's written several books. But one of them that I really quite like is called The Mature Mind, the positive power of the aging brain. And so in that, he proposes 4 developmental phases for the second half of life. And so this is just a snapshot of what those phases are. So along with broad age ranges, they may correspond with, so these 4 phases, they may correspond with midlife reevaluation phase, which is kind of like 40 to 65, liberation phase, late 50s to early 70s, summing up phase, which is from the late 60s into the 80s, and the encore phase, which is late 70s until the end of life. And his conception of these phases is much more fluid than what Erikson's stages were. And Cohen wrote that by later life, people vary widely in every conceivable way. So no rigid system will be accurate for everyone. So this is very loosely held. But I love that there's these different phases that have very positive expectations for aging. He wanted to get the message out loud and clear that older adulthood is not a time of decline, but a dynamic time of growth, learning, and deep satisfactions. That's what he wrote. And there's so many things I love about his ideas, but I'll just share one thing that he writes about from, that he points out actually for that last phase, the encore phase. And it is a very positive outlook. He says that in the human brain, it continues to change across your whole lifespan. And he writes about some PET scans that he was studying that show activity in the amygdala, which is like where the strong like fight, flight, freeze kind of urges come from. So activity in that part of the brain, the amygdala, decreases with age, specifically in response to negative emotions, such as fear or anger or hatred. And due to this change, aging adults experience less intense negative emotions and pay less attention to negative emotional stimuli and are less likely to remember negative than positive emotional materials, while they still maintain or increase their reactivity to positive information. So what that means is that could be, well, he writes, it may be a reason why well-being rises or remains stable in later life, as opposed to a fall. Researchers often point to findings that aging is accompanied by a more positive and less negative emotions. And it's a very important correction to many of the negative stereotypes that persist about being very old. The oldest old can expect to have equivalent or better levels of life satisfaction than in earlier life, despite the likelihood that they'll face more physical ills or losses of one sort of us or another. And I love the hopefulness of that. There's so many, it's starting to change. It used to be, as you saw in Erikson's model, that over 65, it was just like, and now you're old. But there's kind of a shift that I've picked up on that. It's not 65, but now everybody's like, oh no, it's 85. I'm going to be very old and frail and I won't have any fun anymore. But that's simply not the case. And tons of research has shown that that does not have to be the case. And that's actually the minority, not the norm. And I just love the hopefulness in that. But despite the new tons and tons of books and studies and literature there is out there on that do provide that more positive outlook on aging, we all know that unfortunately ageism does still persist. And hopefully this will change, and especially thanks to efforts like these Lunch and Learns and Age Friendly Edmonton and all of the other similar initiatives that are going on all over the world. But why I mentioned all of these things in these different developmental theories is because if you're looking for an art therapist or really any therapist, you'd want to work with somebody who uses one of these newer, more age positive theories regarding older adulthood as the basis for the work that they do. And you have the right to ask about that. And then that can help you, decide who you would want to work with. So with that in mind, if you are interested in finding out more about art therapy in Canada, the Canadian Art Therapy Association, or CATA for short, up at the top, you'll see that, has a website with lots and lots of information. You'd want to look up just www.canadianarttherapy.org, or just put in a search engine, just put Art Therapy Canada, and it should be one of the first things that pops up. If you scroll down, this is like the base landing homepage that you come to. And if you scroll down a little bit on that page, you come to this, and there's these different things that you can click on to learn more. So the What is an Art Therapist has a lot of information, but over on the side, the Find an Art Therapist, you can go in there and you can search for art therapists who are who are up and running in different areas. And I just went in there and put in a search for Edmonton area, and it came up with 27 people and their contact information. It's all there. But then going back over to the what is art therapy button, if you click on that, and it has a whole bunch of writing, but if you go to the bottom of that, it has a whole bunch of really useful art therapy brochures that you can print out. And one of them is even specific for art therapy with elderly people. So that would be a really great website for you to go to if you wanted some more information. Before I end, though, I wanted to just give a plug for creativity in general. Whether or not you feel like you've got some needs that are a bit more, pressing, that you would need an art therapist, just involving yourself in creativity of any sort is powerful, powerful medicine for you. And I wanted to just read, if I could, in The Mature Mind, the book that I was referring to by Cohen, he did studies, quite a few studies of just creativity in general and its positive impact on health. So I just want to read like about a page and a half. And just as you hear this, just think, is there anything at all creative that I could add into my life? Because it's so, so, so good for you. So he writes, creativity in later life is not just an academic subject or an ornament of life, nice, but not really necessary. A great deal of research, both psychological and physiological, has demonstrated that creativity is good for one's health. And it's not just that people who are engaged creatively are healthier to begin with. The very act of engaging one's mind in creative ways affects health directly via the mind-body connection. Our brains are deeply connected to our bodies by their nerves, hormones, and the immune system. And anything that stimulates the brain, reduces stress, and promotes a more balanced emotional response will trigger positive changes in the body. Some preliminary findings show that sustained creativity enhances recovery from infections and injuries, as well as reducing the pain or discomfort of chronic conditions such as arthritis. The exploration of the explosion of so many types of art therapy related and dance and movement therapy and music therapy, poetry therapy, drama therapy, show the truth of this. And then he goes on to tell of a study that he did to compare the physical and health functioning of 150 older adults and compare them to 150 older adults who were not in a creativity program. All the participants in these were 65 and older, and most were living independently when the study began. And the two groups were comparable in their health and their functioning at the start of the study. And the adults who were not in the arts groups were free to socialize, attend classes, do any of their other normal activities. And so they were still in activities, just not creative arts of like dancing, singing, art, whatever. So they say here, the arts groups met for 35 weeks, met weekly for 35 weeks. And there was also in some of them some in-between things, like some people who were in a choir had some concerts and things like that. And then at the end, they assessed each person's health and social functioning with comprehensive questionnaires. And their hypothesis, they were thinking that the people who participated in the arts programs would show less decline than the control group who did not participate in the programs. But he says, we were pleasantly surprised that the initial results exceeded their expectations. Many people in the arts groups had stabilized their health, meaning they didn't decline at all, and many actually improved their health. And that was in a group of people with the average age of 80. So some of the things that they found out is that the people who were in these creative arts groups had better health after 1 year, fewer doctor visits, used fewer medications, felt depressed, had higher morale, and were more socially active. So clearly, doing something creative is very, very good for you, for your health, for your psychological well-being, and even your social health. It's something that just, it's powerful. It's very powerful. So he finished off with saying that taking part in any kind of art program, including non-visual arts of music, dance, theater, can improve your health and your outlook and your resiliency. So if you don't feel like an art therapist or a music therapist or something like that is what you need, just even simply getting out there and doing something creative can be super, super helpful for you. So one thing that we were talking just a tiny bit before we started to mention that I actually do have a drop-in arts studio. It's not art therapy, but it's just a drop-in art time that anybody can come 2 Fridays a month. We're just winding down now for the summer, but it will start up again in September. And it's literally, you can come and do anything. You can come and knit, you can come and paint, you can come and chat. You don't even have to do anything. Some people make cards, just a variety of different arts going on. It's free of charge. There's some basic materials available, but you're free to bring whatever you want to work on. So that's something that might be of interest to you. Feel free to send me an email and I can send you information when we start back up in September. And that's it. That's it for me. So thank you. Thank you very much for your time and listening to all about art therapy.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. That was an amazing presentation. I can't believe how much material you covered in a half hour. It's just a wealth. And I'm sure if other people who've listened will, like myself, I'm going to be certainly reviewing this presentation again. There's just so much there. Thank you very, very much. I've taken lots of notes, and I love the whole idea of the positive views of aging and the different phases, and sort of putting a more positive light on that. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you do. It's very inspirational and exciting to think that there's people like you out in the community supporting people through the arts. So thank you. So now we're going to shift a little bit, but not too much, because we're still under the domain of the arts and all the benefits that come with that. So we're going to now invite Tammy to share with us about therapeutic music. So thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Kathy. So I am a certified healthcare musician. So it's a little bit different than Cheryl, where she's actually has her master's and can do art therapy. I do therapeutic music. So I do not have a degree, but I do have extensive training through the program I went through was Therapy Heart Training Program, which is an internationally recognized online study course, where I learned the elements of playing music in a healthcare setting. So I play the harp. So a lot of people don't hear harps anymore. So it's just. And I myself actually benefited through therapeutic music. About 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and went through cancer treatments. Chemotherapy, lost all of my hair, and basically started over again. And through things similar to what Cheryl was talking about, creativity, music, art classes that I took at actually Wellspring Edmonton, which is outreach for cancer patients, their families. And through there, I was introduced to the harp. I was also introduced to other things like Zentangle, and finding the benefits from that made me choose to become a certified healthcare musician. So through that training, I play either one-on-one or in a group setting to work compassionately with people, body, mind, and spirit. So I enjoy playing at the bedside of patients of all ages and conditions. So it's not just the aging. It can also be for someone who is injured, and it just helps take their mind away from the pain that they're experiencing. It doesn't cure them, but it sets up an environment of healing. So I work in things like hospice, nursing homes, hospitals. So one of the things that I do is I try and play with intent. So I'm looking at the person that I am playing for, always getting their permission that, do you want to hear music today? And then I'm also watching them as I play. So I just start off with very simple things. And it could be something that they know, or it could be something that they, just to calm them. So music affects our whole person, and it's a fourfold effect. It affects our physical, our emotional, and mental, and spiritual. My father, when he was in his late 50s, developed Alzheimer's and dementia, and he kind of shut down and went back inside himself. And one of the things that I've learned through my studies and my training is music is one way that you can touch someone who has kind of, they don't know how to express themselves or that type of thing. So my father was at a point where he wasn't talking to anyone anymore. He'd kind of nod, he'd smile every once in a while. But one Christmas, they had a person come in to play music at the center that he was in. And it really surprised us because he started singing. Now, I'm in my 50s now. So at that time, I was probably in my 40s because it was about 10 years ago. He actually started singing. I never knew before that my father could sing. And it was through listening to the music, and it touched something that he loved, and he could belt out every single one of those Christmas carols, and he had a beautiful voice. So it's surprising what music can do. The other thing that he had started doing was, there was also another resident in the unit that he was in for Alzheimer's, and she played the piano, and he had a piano down by his room. So he would go and knock on her door, and he would escort her by the arm. He would, very gentlemanly like, bring her down to the piano, and she would sit there and play for like half an hour to an hour. And when she was done, he would escort her back to her room. And it was just one way that you could really see that the music opened something up, or it touched something to those people. So the difference between therapeutic music and music therapy is, I don't try to cure or diagnose anything. I'm basically there as support. So I provide live music to enhance the environment for the patients, either in healthcare settings or one-on-one. I know during COVID, there were a lot of people that were shut in, and I had one lady that I played for on a weekly basis. So we would get on Zoom, and she was in her late 70s, so Zoom was new to her. And I would play for her for an hour, hour and a half. And, she would respond to different music, or she would ask, oh, do you know this song? And if I didn't know it, I would see if I could maybe find it for her for another one of our sessions. But she said it just gave her something to look forward to. And it was something that really helped her during that time of being isolated. So when I'm playing for the client, the intention, again, is to provoke healing, and not just the physical aspect, but the whole being. So it's tailored specifically to the patient's need. I try and make it I try to make it conductive to their healing process and their needs. So if I go in and I'm playing for someone, it may be something, again, that they know is another thing that people like to hear. So So even just something like that can unlock something for the person. And you notice that through, are they relaxing? Is it calming? If it's agitating, then I change to something else. But it's just I'm not an entertainer, um, but I try and determine what type of music works for the person that I'm working with. Whoops. So some of the benefits from therapeutic music is persons who are experiencing transitions such as giving birth or even possibly dying, the experiencing illness, injury, physical or emotional pain. Music can help take their mind off of maybe the pain that they're experiencing, or gives them something that they can concentrate other than, the state that they're in right then. Another side benefit of that is facility staff and family members that are accompanying the patient may also benefit from the music, because it also helps them in that regard as well. So again, some of the other benefits to music can include distraction, disassociation from present situation, refocusing of tension, a reprieve from the present situation, a bridge of communication between loved ones. So like my father, it was a bridge that we actually could interact with him even though he was almost to a nonverbal state. It can ease mental focus and assist the dying by facilitating an ease in the transition process. So, yeah, sorry. There are a lot of different aspects to music therapy. So it's not just the written music that you may see. I may also do improvisation. So things like just so basically, for me to be able to give back to others through music, which is something I really enjoy and that really helped me through a period where I was anxious, unsure, you know, had that anxiety. It gave me a sense of hope. It also helps express something that I may not be able to put words to, but through the music, I can show that to others, and hopefully others can benefit from that. I also work with a group of harpists who, I think there's 4 of us now, that are also certified healthcare musicians or in some way in the therapeutic music area, and we go and play at some of our centers. We were playing last Sunday at the General Hospital for the residents there as a Mother's Day celebration. So it was just taking 45 minutes of different music that they may recognize, or just to give them that enjoyment of experiencing music in their day-to-day life. So I don't have any classes or anything like that that I teach. I basically, mine is word of mouth. Um, I'm also a certified Zentangle teacher where I teach meditative drawing, where we look at things one pen stroke at a time and we don't worry about there being any mistakes. We always look at it as a outstanding opportunity presented suddenly, or an oops. So it's just a way of connecting with people and reaching out and being able to express yourself or enjoy the expression of the music or arts from someone else. And that's basically my presentation. So thank you very much for listening to me and for letting me share my experiences and my story.
Thank you, Tammy. That was absolutely wonderful. And I mean, the harp is such a beautiful instrument. I mean, even as you were playing those simple tunes, it was like I could feel myself relaxing. Even you said, does your breath change? I just felt the difference. And I saw a survey many years ago where they said it was just a general survey about what do people enjoy the most, and the top of the top 10 of the list was music, and that was even over chocolate. So like, it's amazing. It's a very powerful medium of healing and connection and all the things that you described in terms of the benefits. And I know, like, when I was doing my ironing, that was my time to put on my favorite ABBA music, So we we all have access to music that can be then therapeutic if we're intentional about it, I think. So
Well, that's something that I try to do as well, because as as people in our society age, there's different types of music that they listen to. So like for my father, I would play, if I was playing for him, I would play probably ABBA or, older songs where, my generation, or those that are maybe 10 or 15 years older, are going to have a different type of music that they're going to respond to. And there was actually a study done where they brought, it was iPads, or not iPads, what are they called? The little guys that, iPods, so, or anyways, they used to have like nanos and stuff like that where you put music on it, and they would put the music on that would resonate with the person that they were giving it to. So these were with Alzheimer's patients, and the difference after they were listening to the music, they were able to communicate again. It like connected some of those pathways that maybe were lost in Alzheimer's and dementia. And to me, that just really resonated, because I went through that with my father, and I thought, well, if I can do that, because I've played music all of my life. I've only played the harp for about 5 years, but I've played flute, and I've been in music for over 45 years, which I'm dating myself right there too. But it's something that I get immense enjoyment from, and if I can, maybe touch someone's, life, if you're in a hospital, or and just make it a little easier, to me that's worth it.
yeah, well, thank you for all that you do. And I love that you're intentional about it, that you've identified it as something that has helped you and that could help and does help other people too. And it just helps all of us to think about music in another way. Like even your example of the difference between therapeutic music and music therapy. And I never thought of that before. So that was very interesting to hear from you, and to think about even how I might be able to be more intentional about music for myself, but also for my loved ones too. So thank you for all the great information that you provided. And I'm just wondering if there's anybody that has in the chat, if anybody wants to put any questions in the chat now. We do have a few minutes that we can take a few questions directed at Cheryl or Tammy. So I don't see, there were a few questions that came up and I think we've answered them. Zentango, that was a question that someone had. I wonder, Tammy, if you want to just explain that a little bit
Well,
further.
Zentangle, yeah, I can explain that further. Zentangle is a meditative drawing. So there's basically 8 steps to it. We look at gratitude and appreciation for the materials that we have, and it can just be as simple as a pen and a piece of paper. And we start off usually with a small square, and we divide that by putting corner dots in place and drawing lines. So we make a border. So we make that bigger space to a smaller space. And then we add a string, which again divides it even more. And then we do what are called Zentangles or tangles, which are just different drawings that you're doing mindfully. So you're concentrating one pen stroke at a time. And when we've done that, we do shading. So we create, we bring the picture kind of to life. And you don't have to have any type of artistic talent. If you can basically draw an S, do sort of a round circle, a T, you have the ability to do Zentangle. Once we've shaded it, we initial, or we put what we call a chop, which is you're taking ownership of that artwork, and then we appreciate what we've done. And usually what we'll do at the very end is add a mosaic. So I teach this at Wellspring, Edmonton, and I'll just see if I can share really quickly one of the pictures that we did. Because we worked on mandalas, and everyone has a different interpretation of what they create from the instructions that I give. So I'll just really quickly here. Never works really quickly when you don't have it up right away. Okay, let me just see if I can share.
This might that might be a good segue into one of the other questions and that's what happens to the art that people make in art therapy. So
yeah, and it's oh, it's saying I need a plug-in here. Hold on.
I have, I can answer what happens to the art in art therapy while you're looking for your.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of time. So most art therapists, that every single one I know, and I would be surprised if there's ones out there still who aren't like this, but the art that you make in an art therapy session is your creation. You have made it, it's yours, and you get to take it and do whatever you want with it. So when I'm working with people, I encourage them to take it home. Sometimes though, there's some people who don't want to take it home, who would like to leave it in my care, and that's possible as well. If there's things that get left with me at the end when we're no longer working together, I do keep it for maybe 6 months, and then it's disposed of in a way that it's completely gone, meaning I burn it. I have a big fire in my backyard, a fire pit, and I burn it so that it's just gone. There's no record of it, so that it can't be, found or seen by somebody else. That's part of the ethical responsibility that's set out in our ethical guidelines that we are required to work by in Canada. So having said that, it is your art. You can do whatever you want with it. There are a lot of different case studies written up of art therapists working with groups of people who want to actually display their art to get, information out, or to stand up for themselves with any issue, like with anorexia or different things like that, that people would be working with. They might make art in response to how they feel society puts pressure on them to look a certain way, and they want to shift that. So it could even be with ageism. Somebody could have a group of people and they could make art in response to how they've experienced ageism, and you could curate that and put a showing in a gallery to get out that message and to promote social change or things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do with it, but it's yours. You get to decide. That's the basic line of it.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for giving us another idea of about how to talk about ageism and how to promote positive aging. So that's a great idea. Thank you. And Tammy, did you find that?
I did find it. So I will just
Okay.
share my screen here. So this is one that we did with Mandela's. So everyone had the same instructions, but everyone did something a little bit differently each time. So they all ended up with different outcomes. And I'll just show you one other thing here. So this is what I was talking about when we do a mosaic at the end. So everyone has different interpretations of what we created. So this was the one that I had done, and then these were the ones that everyone else had completed. And this was really neat. I had two people that they had family members that had birthdays coming up, and they were twins, so they each made a birthday card for them in the class and gave them to the family members for their birthday. So it's really interesting to see. Whoops, I'm not sure what happened there. Sorry about that. But we use different materials as well. So it can be on, black, it can be on, so this was a black mosaic. So the wonderful thing here is there's, 6 different people, and they're all drawing and they're giving their own interpretation, and all of it is art. When you look at this all presented all together, most people can't pick out their own. So when they give me their tiles at the end of our session, I always mix them up and then put them out in the mosaic, and they look at it and it's actually just a piece of art that they didn't think that they could do.
Well, that's fascinating. Boy, you've really sort of opened up to us a whole new way of looking at art and art therapy and therapeutic art. And thank you for that. I feel so inspired. I want to get some crayons and paints and wool and all kinds of things out. And maybe I'll just ask my husband to dance again. I don't know. There's so many ways that we can embrace the arts and be involved in the arts. And thank you for encouraging us today in that. And just a reminder to everyone, this session has been recorded. And if you would like to hear it again or share it with your friends or get some of the great references that both Cheryl and Tammy offered us today, please visit Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council website for this Lunch and Learn again. And we do have another Lunch and Learn coming up, not until September though, so watch for that. And please let your friends know if there's a topic that you're interested in or you think somebody else might be interested in. So yeah, if you do have any other questions for either Cheryl or Tammy, I think Angela offered the email addresses for both Cheryl and Tammy there, but also you can contact us at agefriendlyedmonton@seniorscouncil.net and provide us with any questions you might want us to direct to them. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We do have a short survey about this event that we're sending out in advance. So please do take the time, just a few minutes to complete that. It really helps us with our planning. And I think that's it for today. Thanks again to our presenters, Cheryl and Tammy, and hope you have a great rest of your day. So thanks everybody. Till the next time.